everyone. And thank you for joining this information session on our program, the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies program, specifically our master's programs today. I'm the interim director of WGSS at GW this year, while our director, Ashwini Tambe, is on sabbatical in a Fulbright in India. And I'm also a professor of philosophy at GW, and I teach both undergrad and graduate courses that are cross-listed with WGSS. So let me tell you though today about our program, the reason that you're here. And so let me go right into my slides. Okay, so this is the outline of what I'll be discussing today with all of you. The program details, the history of our program and relevance, courses, faculty. We have two different tracks in our grad program. So I'll be talking about those two different tracks and saying a little about our graduate certificate program and our joint MA, JD and MA LLM programs with the law school. I'll give you some information on career outcomes of our WGSS MA graduates, and then also go through the admissions process, most relevant with our February 1st deadline coming up for applications just in a couple of days. And then tuition costs and funding opportunities. So, and lastly, I'll conclude with showing you some of our flyers for events that we've been hosting, because we host several events every year and about 10 a year. And so I just would give you a sampling of the different kinds of things that we do. So, okay, let me just jump in then to the next slide. Okay, so right now there's a picture of me as interim director, and I'm also the DGS in the department for the MA students in the liberal arts track for this semester. Aiko Strader, Professor Strader, is our director of graduate studies for the public policy track, and she's also associate professor of public policy, WGSS, and sociology. Ivy Ken, who you see on your right, is our WGSS Undergraduate Studies Director. She's also the Director of Graduate Studies for Sociology this year, and she's an Associate Professor in Sociology, Public Policy, and WGSS. So we're the three faculty who are responsible, and you would, and especially with Aiko and I for the grad program, would be interacting with us in terms of getting guidance on your program of study as in your first year as a grad student and throughout the program. Next, our core faculty, there you have a picture of Ashwini Tambe on the top left, who's our director, who's away this year in India right now on her Fulbright. Kavita Daya is not teaching for us at present. She was the director of the program before Ashwini, but because she's associate dean of academic innovation, but she's still very involved in our program and still a core faculty member in it. Jamita Barlow is on sabbatical this year, but she'll be back next fall, and she's assistant professor of writing, health policy, and management, as well as WGSS, and has been has a real specialty, especially it focuses on public health, and has been very helpful to our WGSS students who've also wanted to take courses in the Milken School of Public Health as part of their program in WGSS. So Shweta Krishnan is with us this year. We're hoping to have Shweta again next year, and she teaches several core classes, undergrad and graduate, in our program. So if you were to come to GW next year, you would most likely have Shweta for one of your fall courses. A.K. Wright, assistant professor of American Studies, and WGSS just joined us this past year, and they especially focus on African American and queer issues, and also have a serious interest in abolition. That's an area of specialization for them, and prison abolition, and so they've been a wonderful addition to our program. Sarah Matheson has been away on sabbatical, and we're very happy that we're getting her back this fall. She is associate professor of history and WGSS, and she also offers core both undergrad and graduate courses in our program. Okay, so one of the things we're very proud of is that we have GW, the first women's studies graduate degree program in the US. It started in 1972, followed by the public policy concentration, which is really a distinctive one in our program and separates us from a lot of other WGSS MAs around the country. And so that started in the early 1980s. So these are our graduate programs are really well established and have been around a long time, and we're very proud of the sort of longevity of those programs. So they're both both tracks of the MA are very interdisciplinary, and we offer our courses do bridge the humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences. I would say especially the humanities and social sciences, even more than the natural sciences. But the program is thoroughly interdisciplinary, both master's programs. And I think one of the things that is an especially attractive feature of our program is that we really work with our students. Everyone has their own individually tailored curriculum in terms of being able to look at other departments and their offerings and put together their own course of study that works for them and speaks to their own interests. And there are so many, if you're in the policy track, there's so many policy courses across the university, including in the Milken School of Public Health, but also many different departments. And so we have quite a few cross-listed courses with faculty in other departments. So there's a really abundance, a wealth of courses, and also even with the liberal arts as well, as we'll see the MA track that I'll be talking about shortly. There are electives for both tracks that you are allowed to choose, and a lot of wonderful opportunities there in terms of taking courses especially in other departments, in some cases, other schools. So yeah, I think a central uniting feature of the courses in our program are that they analyze structures of power, particularly as they relate to gender, race, sexuality, ethnicity, and nationality. They also, as it says here, we also develop theories and methods for challenging inequity and imagining social justice in new ways. So this is something that is true both at the undergrad level in our WGSS program and also at the graduate level. Let me go ahead here. So why GW? I know there are many other choices out there and excellent choices where one could pursue a MA in WGSS. I think some of the options, some of the things I've just mentioned, that there are if you look at GW schedule of classes, you can Google it and take a look at it, and 6,000 level and above are graduate level courses, and you can click on different departments and take a look at what's available. Is that there's just so many different options to create this robust curriculum and exciting curriculum that works for you and advances your own interest in the field. The public policy, as I mentioned previously, the fact that we offer the MA in public policy in conjunction with the Trachtenberg School of Public Policy and Public Administration makes us very unique. And there's an amazing number of offerings in the Trachtenberg School that one could pursue. So the certificate in women's gender sexuality studies, we do have a certificate option. However, I will mention that for the certificate, it's the expectation is that that's something that's available for students who are in MA programs in other departments at GW and want to also get this certificate in WGSS along the way. So the majority of people who have pursued that, if not everyone to date, has already been in an MA program or enrolled. If you are thinking of applying to more than one program and you end up in a different program than ours and come to GW and you wanted to pursue the certificate, that would be a good thing to start looking into. Even probably for fall registration, and consult with probably with the chair, with me or Ashwini, whoever's is handling it at that time, but checking with the director of the program of WGSS about getting some advice about what to take, so that you could get started on that process. But I will say the certificate is only 4 courses, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. So let me hold off on that now. The dual degree program with the law school I mentioned briefly previously.
And we have the JD, WGSS MA, and the LLM, WGSS MA courses. I there too, and this will come up when I go to the slide that we have devoted to this hybrid degree. You need to be admitted to the law school, the GW Law School, as independently of, and be in the GW Law School to apply for this degree. So you can't get in just through WGSS alone. You get accepted through both the law school and WGSS. So our program also does offer flexibility, pursuing those interests. I've been emphasizing that a lot because I do think it's one of the most attractive features of our program, and that you can get both interdisciplinary and discipline-based scholarship in the liberal arts track, as I'll be mentioning on the slide devoted to that. You can do a disciplinary concentration or an interdisciplinary concentration for the liberal arts track. So yeah, we have strengths in the program and across the university and intersectional approaches, transnational feminism and public policy. And I can't think of a much better location to be in the country to pursue, especially the public policy interests in terms of obtaining internships and access to the DC area resources that you have at your right there locally, a walk away. Literally, we're 4 blocks from the White House, so we're really right downtown and right on the metro line. It's right, it stops, the Foggy Bottom stops right on campus. Also something that very few other universities in the area have. They don't have the metro right on campus, only Catholic does. So part-time, full-time study options, both are available. And I think on your application form, there's a place to indicate that most of our students go full-time, but also most of them have jobs as well. And we do have evening courses offered. Our courses tend to be offered no earlier than 5:10 to 7, grad courses, or 6:10 to 8, or even 7:10 to 9. Those are the major time slots for grad courses at GW. And they're designed so that students can have a job and still do classes. And so if you're in the graduate program, in a master's program, 3 courses is considered a full load per semester. Okay, so in terms of also what are some of the advantages to pursuing this degree, a master's in WGSS, you could pursue the joint degree with the law school if you're into the law, get into the law school. Also, if you decide to go on, and some students that on the public policy track have wanted to pursue a PhD in their field, and so then the WGSS public policy MA courses can count toward the PhD at GW in the public policy and public administration program. So that's something that one could consider. I think we've had some students do that in the past. There are career opportunities also in policy or advocacy related nonprofit organizations and public agencies. There are many of our students, there are quite a few, end up deciding to stay in DC afterwards. They've already started maybe a job that they like, or are using the degree to maybe change and move into a different area. But there are a lot of job opportunities, or at least have been traditionally, and hopefully we'll still have them in the current administration. So there's also academic preparation for future. You do get the preparation, I think, a rigorous preparation for future professional and graduate study in other fields. So we have also had students go on and do a disciplinary PhD. Maybe if they were liberal arts track and let's say sociology was their concentration, gone on for a sociology PhD. We've had students do a philosophy concentration as well, but also quite a few who've considered, are applying to go into law school or planning to go on to another kind of program, and have found this is the training they got in our program, the graduate training, served them really well and left them well prepared to go on to that next step in further study. Okay, so now I'm getting to the core requirements for the MA degree. And I think this is something that's, sorry, let me go backwards here. This was the MA degree here for the core requirements are the fundamentals of feminist theory course, the research issues in WGSS, then the capstone research seminar, and then the practicum or thesis. Most of our students do the practicum. And it's usually, they do take it in the second year in the spring. The Fundamentals of Feminist Theory course is a fall first year course. It's the one that Shweta Krishnan's been teaching, I believe, and but we will have, we always have, that's where the first year cohort usually are all together in that course. It creates a real bond with that cohort, and I think the students have always had a very positive experience in it. So the way the program's structured is you take the fundamentals course first year fall, regardless of which MA track you're in. Research issues in WGSS, you take the second year in the fall. The capstone seminar and the practicum are in the second year, usually in the spring. And the graduate certificate students I was mentioning earlier, they have two of their 4 courses that they're required to take. One is the fundamentals course, the other is the research issues in WGSS, and then 2 electives they choose with the in consultation with the director of graduate studies. So or actually the director of the program, either one, but they get, that's who they would go to, either of those 2 people, to get their electives approved. And since they're usually in another department, they're often pick electives that are come out of their courses that came from their own department, or they'll, in which case you can count them towards your master's in that department and count them towards the WGSS certificate. So that's another attractive aspect of the certificate. If there are some courses that focus on gender, women, and or sexuality in that department that you're in, if you're in a different master's program, and there are 2 of them that you've taken that you get approval for, then you need to only take the fundamentals of feminist theory and the research issues in WGSS to obtain a graduate certificate. Okay, so the MA in WGSS, I was just focusing on the shared coursework that you do in both tracks of our masters, the liberal arts track as well as the public policy. But now I'm just going to say something about the MA and the liberal arts track MA. And so those students have an additional theory course, and they have a choice there. So the additional theory course that they take is either contemporary feminist theory or global feminisms, and those are each offered every year. So you have a choice about when you take one of those courses, and then 4 courses related to the student's selected disciplinary or topical concentration. And so there's some examples are given here: sociology, history, anthropology, psychology. We've also had students do philosophy as a concentration in the past. So and religion's possible as well. So there's many different areas that you could do. You could really choose and within the disciplines, but also the topical concentrations have been especially popular, and these are all interdisciplinary: gender and health, gender and race, global feminisms, gender and international development, LGBTQ plus, and sexuality. So that is not intended to be an exhaustive list. The student can propose their own concentration, and if it's a new concentration, again, all you need to do is get the approval of the DGS for liberal arts, which in this case for this particular year is me. And so then on top of those 4 courses, you have 3 other electives, and that's where you also have even more room. Let's say you're doing a disciplinary MA in liberal arts and sociology. Those 3 other electives would be, you'll have 4 courses coming out of the sociology program department. That will be where you'll get the 12 credits for your disciplinary courses, 4 courses. But then you have 3 other electives. So they could be other WGSS grad courses that weren't already required by the core. They could be courses in another department that is, again, that is in the Elliott School of International Affairs, for instance, that's relevant to your interests. So there's a lot of flexibility here. This is where the one's able to just design their own curriculum so well, because the way the electives are structured, even the 4 courses related to the student's disciplinary or topical concentration is something that you participate very actively in helping to choose and structure your course of study. So let me turn now to the MA in Public Policy with a concentration in WGSS. That's how the degree gets awarded, and how it appears on the on your diploma. It's so this program is run through the Trachtenberg School of Public Policy and Public Administration. It's sort of the MA in Public Policy. It's under that larger umbrella. And so we have a similarly in philosophy, a philosophy MA in philosophy and public policy, and that's also under the Trachtenberg School umbrella. So there's a few different MA programs that are under that that are fall under that school, but the Trachtenberg School itself is still part of Columbian College. So the here the courses for the public policy students. MA students that you need to also take on top of the core courses I discussed a couple slides earlier. First is gender and public policy, offered every year. Then also the PPPA is the abbreviation that you'll see on the GW schedule of classes for the Trachtenberg Schools courses. And as I mentioned earlier, all the grad courses at GW are 6,000 level, and you can see that here with the numbering. So the PPPA is a Trachtenberg School policy analysis course that's required of all our WGSS MA students, as well as in the econ department. Well, it's through PPPA, but it's an economics for public decision-making course. And that's also taught every year in the fall usually. So it's often a students will take, if they're in the MA in public policy, they often they take the fundamentals course in economics for public decision-making often for the fall semester. Gender and public policy is usually offered in the spring semester. And again, this is information we will share with all incoming students who are accepted and accept are admitted to the program and accept that admittance. Then also there's research methods and applied statistics. So we have our own research issues, feminist research issues course, research issues and feminist theory course. This is a different course. It's a research methods and applied statistics course, again, that's offered by the Trachtenberg School. That gives our students the skills they need to do policy work and analyze statistics and various information that analyze the data that is crucial to doing that work well. So then also in the MA in public policy, although it has specific required courses that I've just discussed, the four I've just discussed, there are also still electives that you get to choose on your own, and that's 3 courses. All of our grad courses and undergrad courses at GW in the WGSS program are 3 credit courses. So 9 credits is 3 courses. So there too, usually you work closely with your DGS to talk about and get approval for any of the electives if they're not already WGSS courses. The certificate program, yes, it could be completed in 1 year or 2. If a student's here and only realizes at the end of the first year that they'd really like to do the certificate program, you would have to take 2 courses a semester, your second year, but you could do it. And so this is the emphasis on, as it mentions here, is having students think and learn about gender in a systematic and integrated way using a variety of methodological approaches. So yes, it is primarily designed, I said this earlier, for grad students in other GW programs who are already in a different master's program in Columbian College usually, who would like a WGSS credential. But it is possible if you're in a program through another one of our schools, you might also pursue a WGSS credential. So you could do that actually in the law school, I believe as well. So, but you would have to take the 2 courses I mentioned earlier, Fundamentals of Feminist Theory and Research Issues in WGSS, and then you would choose 2 courses in consultation with your advisor in your own program to make sure it would be okay with them since you're in a different program, and maybe you can have it count for both, and then also with either the director of the WGSS program or with our director of one of our directors of graduate studies. Okay. The joint law degree, There are two, you can work towards both. Usually, I would say the student is already in the law school and then decides they'd like to do the MA in WGSS two. That's happened in the cases that where people have done it so far, and they've been able to make that work. But as it's mentioned here, the joint law degree with WGSS MA program usually takes 4 years to complete instead of the 5 years that would be required to pursue the degrees separately. So the law school's 3 years, and then normally it'd be a 2-year MA in WGSS. But if you do it concurrently, you can do both of degrees, receive both in 4 years. And so the LLM MA program, there too, you have an option to do both. The MA in public, either track of the MA, the liberal arts, or the public policy track, as well as the Masters of Law degree. So, yes, and as it mentions here, you have to be accepted by both Columbian College into our program as well as into the law school. Okay, so now I'm getting to the career outcomes, and I want to mention some of the successful careers our WGSS graduates have pursued after leaving GW with their MA in WGSS in the liberal arts track. So people have served, we have alums who've served as HR and as an HR specialist in the U.S. Department of State. The State Department's really right there, just across our campus, at the edge of our campus. That's just that was a good example of someone who stayed in town after they got their degree. A senior editor and writer. We have an alum who served as a senior editor and writer for the American Association of University Women. A legislative director of Church Women United, a legislative assistant for Catholics for a Free Choice, an attorney with the Public Interest Law Group. So that's someone who went on, obviously, and got a law degree or did the joint degree while they were here in law school. So a program officer with DC Trust, a program and outreach officer with the DC Volunteer Lawyers Project. I'm sorry, program and outreach manager with the DC Volunteer Lawyers Project, a development associate with the National Women's Law Center, and the director of operations for DC SAFE, a principal for Solutions for Change, which I believe was a startup that they helped to found, and a development associate, who's also assistant dean of faculty at the New School, which is in New York City, a senior research consultant at the National Partnership for Women and Families. So as you can see, people have done a variety of different things, and including people in the liberal arts track who are doing sort of policy related goals as well. One thing I want to mention is that if you were to come to our program in one track, and when you were here decided, if you started out in the liberal arts and thought, well, realized, oh, I prefer to do the public policy track. It is it's very easy and pretty seamless to transition from one track of the major of the MA program to the other. So that's also something, if you're having trouble choosing which one to start with, because some of the core courses, the fundamentals course is core for both, and there are core courses, several 4 core courses that are shared by both tracks. If you were a little bit on the fence or unsure, you could start with those core required courses, and then if you felt like you wanted to change, you wouldn't lose any. You'd be still moving along at the expected pace, so you wouldn't have any difficulty doing that. So there's also, in addition to the flexibility in terms of designing your own curriculum, there's also some flexibility if someone starts out in the public policy track and realizes I'd really prefer to be the liberal arts track. So that isn't an issue on our end. Okay, so career outcomes for the MA in public policy with the WGSS concentration. In terms of jobs our alums have held, they include a research associate with the Urban Institute, associate director of art, editorial and media at the American Association of University Women. So we have a couple alums at the American Association of University Women who've been hired by them. A political media coordinator also for the American Association of University Women. Vice President for Programs and Policy at Women's Work, the National Network for Women's Employment, Director of Financial Security and Mobility at Pew Charitable Trust, legislative director for federally employed women, senior public affairs associate for Planned Parenthood of Metropolitan Washington, another person who stayed in the DC area, as you can see, quite a few have, program officer for the Washington Area Women's Foundation. So as you can imagine, also, this gives us a very extensive alumni network in the DC area, and our alums have been really are very extremely active and supportive of the program and supportive of current students in the program. So we also have both undergraduate and graduate awards every year, and some of those awards are funded by our alums as a way to give back to the program. So, okay, let me move on. Okay, so the key area of concern for all of you attending this workshop, since you're in the process of applying to master's programs. First of all, a frequent question about the GRE scores. They are not required for our program. So you do not have to submit any GRE scores if you've taken them, and you don't have to take the GRE if you haven't yet done so for our program. But if you have GRE scores and you feel good about those scores, then you should by all means include them if you think that they represent a strength in your application. So feel free to include them, especially for the MA in public policy. So if you send them in, we definitely look at them, but they're not required. And for the certificate program, there's a completely different application process, and you do not have to submit GRE scores for that. I think a very important part of your application is your statement of purpose essay, because that's a place where you're giving us a sense of why you would like to come to GW and as a member of our particular MA program and the track that you're interested in. So that's something that we do. Again, we take seriously, and as it mentions here for the MA public policy students, even if you want to pursue this track, and you don't necessarily have a strong background in terms of your transcript, your undergraduate transcript or previous graduate transcript for quantitatively oriented courses, at least being able to speak to your ability and feel your sense of confidence that you feel that you can take those courses. Because as you saw when I spoke about the MA in public policy required courses that are specific to that track, there were courses like the economics for public decision making and the applied statistics course that are quantitative. So it's important to be able to take on that feel like confident that you can be successful in those courses. There's a lot of support that can be offered too for students in those courses. And as I mentioned before, we have had students before who haven't had that strong background in econ or statistics or public policy before, even though they're pursuing that track and they seek to get that training here. And we can provide it, but at least in the statement, it would help to indicate a recognition that that's going to be a part of the process and enthusiasm for pursuing it. Okay, so the writing sample, 10 to 15 pages. This is just for the MA program, either track. 10 pages is fine. I don't think it, but you definitely don't want to go over 15. That just is too, it's, we get a lot of applications, and we want to give each application the attention and time it deserves. But if you submit a super long writing sample beyond the requested page length, then that isn't a strength. Let's put it that way. I think the strength is to give us a strong writing sample that is indicative of the kind of work that you're proud of and that you feel that you're going to build on in our program, and that's in that requested page length of 10 to 15 pages. That's double spaced, not single spaced, 12-point font. Okay, official transcript that is required. And if you have done graduate work, whether or not you received a degree before applying for our program, you should definitely have a transcript from any school that you've done graduate work in, and as well as an undergraduate transcript. And so you need the undergrad. If you're applying straight out of undergrad, then obviously you're not going to have any other transcripts. But if you transferred, then you would want to have, as an undergrad, you would want to have transcripts from both schools. Okay, so recommendations for the MA, either track, 2 are required, but 3 are preferred for people who are applying for funding by February 1st. So we ideally would like 3. of those. And I would say it's also important that sometimes if someone's been working for a while, one of those might be, if you have three, one I think could easily be from a more professional one, from someone you've worked for. But I think the two you would want to be academic recommendations. And then the certificate just requires one recommendation, since that usually certificate students are applying when they're already here in a different MA program. Usually they have someone from their own department or someone they've taken a WGSS course with even, ask them to do the recommendation for them. So usually that recommendation is often by a GW professor that they've actually had. Tuition costs and funding opportunities, as has been mentioned, is on the website for CCAS and for us. Completed applications received by February 1st are considered for competitive partial tuition awards. So our tuition awards are only partial. I think so that you do need to supplement and be able to afford to pay for the rest of your tuition. However, there are some work opportunities on campus that students have utilized that have helped them to pay for their tuition, as in the MA program that isn't covered by a partial tuition award. So one popular option are the graduate instructional assistantships. And those are offered. We have some of those for our larger undergrad classes. Our Intro to Women, Gender, Sexuality Studies course, for instance, has a couple graduate assistants, GIAs. They help with the grading, and they attend the class, and then they also help with the grading for the class. So once in a while, if the professor has to be away and they're comfortable doing it, they may be asked to lead a particular class too, on a topic that is related to their own interests. So that's a salary only, so that can help with paying the rent. But it doesn't apply to tuition. That's just earning extra money and experience, that valuable experience. So we also have several. Sociology has numerous GIAs for their various courses, and quite a few of our WGSS students have been sociology GIAs and have been very successful in getting those. And those pay right now $5,150 per course. And if you do it both semesters, and that's just over 10,000 for the semester, for the year. So that helps with paying the rent and expenses. We do have students who've obtained full-time administrative positions on campus, because they do include generous tuition benefits. And if you start the position, once you start a position on campus, if you start a full-time position, you're eligible for those benefits the semester after, the closest beginning of semester after you've started. So we have a first-year student right now who's an academic department administrator in the communication, speech, and hearing department. And he got the job. He started in mid-August, and he was able to get the tuition benefits for the end of August when classes started. So that's very attractive. A while back, you had to wait 3 semesters to get the benefits, but now you get them pretty much almost immediately. The only exception would be if you start in the middle of a semester, your benefits you wouldn't be eligible for the benefits till the next semester began. So that's been a really popular option. We've also had full-time faculty or full-time staff on campus who are pursuing an MA in WGSS, who got the job first and realized they have these tuition benefits, and so have joined our program. So so I think that you'll have access, if you accept admittance to GW, to our program, to both part-time and full-time listings of jobs on campus. There are many, many jobs on campus, and so those are listed regularly. However, if you are an international student, you can serve as a GIA, but some of the positions outside, working outside the university, is something usually one can't do because of visa restrictions, unless, for instance, you're working for your own embassy, or in which case you're not being employed by a U.S. company, you're being employed by your own government. So So also there are fellowships. We have an Office of Graduate Assistants and Fellowships that helps pass on information, and we disseminate it also. And we have a digest weekly, to every other week, bi-weekly Women, Gender, Sexuality Studies digest that lists fellowships, jobs, internships that we hear about and learn about that. And so we make those publicly available for our students. And also, if we encourage students to submit papers they've written for courses. If they've written a strong paper for a course, to submit it for a conference, whether it's a WGSS conference or a conference, an interdisciplinary conference, that their paper, it could be a GLBTQ studies conference of some sort, that their paper really fits, or whatever it might be. If you get a paper accepted to a professional conference, you can also receive funding to help defray your expenses of travel and lodging expenses for that conference. We may not be able to we can't cover all the expenses, especially if a flight's involved, but we are able to give significant support to students to do that. Okay. I wanted to sort of end my part of the presentation before the Q&A by talking a little bit about something I mentioned at the very outset, namely that we run at least 10 events per academic year, that we have a lot of events. We have a really strong sense of community in our program, both undergraduate and graduate, and a strong, very active presence on campus. We have a welcome back student and faculty mixer at the very beginning of the semester. We also do an orientation for our incoming first year master's students in both tracks at the beginning of the semester. And our second year students usually host our first year students for a social event just off campus right after that ends. So we have a series of student-led discussions each year. And we had one on Afrofuturism in the fall, and I'll show you some of the flyers, and one on the election, the presidential election, just before it occurred this fall. We're going to have one on ecofeminism this spring, and we're also going to have one next week on international feminist solidarity. You'll see the poster for that shortly. We do several events featuring our alumni, especially alumni in the area, but sometimes too having events where we bring in our alumni who are living in other parts of the country. We do have faculty presentations. We have the new incoming director of the professional psychology program here at GW. Oksana Yakushko gave a wonderful presentation this fall on the Ukrainian feminist movement, for instance. And she's Ukrainian and a feminist faculty member and psychoanalytic theorist, and it was a fascinating presentation. We have our annual ULI Symposium every spring. We're going to have two speakers this spring, Lisa Gunther from Queen's University in Canada and E. Ornelas from Dartmouth University. Both of them work on prison abolition, carceral studies, as well as Indigenous studies. So it's going to be a wonderful event. We have that in the spring every year. And this year it'll be taking place on March 31st. We also have the WGSS Graduate Student Symposium, and that happens in the spring. That showcases our grad students' research that they've done while they've been in our program. So there's a couple pictures here. We also had Fighting for Change in Iran. We did have a talk by Dr. Fariba Parsa this year. That was on the bottom. And she is Iranian, but has been, obviously hasn't been back for a very long time, but because of the situation in Iran for women and especially for feminists. And so she she spoke about the feminist movement in Iran and the history of it, and the history of the high price women have often paid for speaking out in Iran as feminists. So it was a really powerful and moving discussion. One thing I was going to mention, if you are admitted to the program and you come to Admitted Students Day, which will be on Thursday, March 27th this year, we're also having in the philosophy department, the feminist philosopher Kate Mann come, and that's something that I'll be inviting all admitted students to. She's giving a 4 p.m. talk. She wrote Down Girl was her first book on misogyny, then entitled focusing especially on male and white male entitlement. And the newest book, Unshrinking: How to Face Fat Phobia, was just shortlisted for the National Book Award. So we're very excited to have her, and very excited that it coincided with National for Admitted Students Day at GW. So if you are admitted to the program and you are able to come to Admitted Students Day, it should be a wonderful, that should be a wonderful talk that'll be part of it this year. Okay, so here's just some examples. As I conclude here, my part of the presentation, just wanted to give you examples. We did a publishing workshop, was run last year, that Ashwini spearheaded and organized, and that's the one on the left. So that was a really well-attended workshop, and we had a guest alum who's also an author, and as well as some of our own faculty members speaking. The Yuli Symposium, this was last year's Yuli Symposium, Hungry Translations Yearning for Justice, with Rika Nagar. So that was a really interesting talk as well on her research and the activist work that she has been doing with other women, especially focusing on Southeast Asia. Court mediation of domestic violence, again, in context, this was a past was where we had a speaker come and give this talk. So the speaker was at Howard that year that the talk was given, and so that we're able, that's something else that we can profit from and take advantage of. And not just our department, there are so many fascinating events and talks happening on campus in every department, because, and especially tied to our location there, we really get wonderful speakers, and you could really be going to a talk almost every day of the week if you have the time. But there's always at there's an abundance of options, and the hard thing is what to choose, because you can't go to everything. So we've also had one of our active alums, Susan Markham, spoke to the practicum class. That class, we often have guest speakers for the practicum that's offered every spring. And they talk about their own career path. And so Susan Markham came and talked about her career trajectory last year, and her experience leading government affiliated units, and advising corporations, as well as her focus on peace building. Yeah, so these are just going to be more examples. I won't go through all of them in any depth, because you'll have access to these slides and can go back and look at some of these events that we had. Jamita Barlow organized the Writing Black Girls and Women's Health Science. This is a major area of research for her, focusing on Black girls and Black women's health. We're really excited that she's coming back this fall. Let me just say some of the others. Here's just some of the other events, and you can see this is our own Ivy Ken, our director of undergrad studies this year, spoke about her own research that she's been doing on ACOMA and again, as it says here, the matrilineal and indigenous roots there, and in terms of how, and also thinking about how learning about ACOMA has really changed for her, that how she viewed this origin story that gets told in her discipline, sociology, about how it began, because learning that there was really, as she says, an origin to the story, sociology, beginning with the lessons learned from the longest inhabited space in North America, a city in the ACOMA Pueblo. So it's really a very ambitious project that's trying to also reshape how the field views itself of sociology. So she's someone who's very popular for our students to take courses with, as you can imagine. So, okay, then we've done a panel discussion and networking reception, and that was with several of our alums who came and spoke, and did that that was tied to the GW's career. Well, it was entitled Careers Advancing Gender Equity, to give our students a sense of what some of the options are. I don't think those were only alums. I think it was a combination of people who came. Okay, this just gives you example what we do for our research day. And if you come to GW your second year, you would be in one of your picture would be in here too for that year. So we have a picture of our graduating master's students and who participated in the research day and presented their work. So everyone will be presenting, and they get organized, the presentations, into different panels. As you can see here, building equity through 4 nonprofit organizations, cultivating equitable environments for students, advancing women's rights through public policy, advancing the rights of LGBTQ plus people, fiction, reality, imagination, contemporary media, and revisiting marriage, family, and feminist activism. So this is work that students have done often in a class, in a course, and you can sort of see the diversity of topics and also how interdisciplinary they are. Okay. And these, I'm sorry, there's even a third slide. So this is another graduate research day list of fiction, reality, and imagination and contemporary media and revisiting. Oh, no, that's the same one twice. We'll have to fix that because that we already had those two panels. So injury, the next one is just brown bag. This is an example of just having a talk that was organized by Ashwini Tambe, our director last year, with two grad students, M. Rupp and Andrew Tussell. M graduated last spring, Andrew is graduating this spring. And so they did summer research last summer with Professor Tambe. And so they presented their research on restorative justice, sexual injury, and digital retribution at that brown bag last spring. Andrew organized two, sorry, I went backwards. Andrew organized two student-led discussions on the election, presidential election. We're trying to get him to do a third one on post-presidential election this spring. We're hoping he'll do that. We had Rosemary Garland Thompson speak this fall, a really well-attended event that was she's a well-known figure, bioethicist, and someone who's done amazing work on disability. And so she gave a talk on the art and ethics of disability culture. I mentioned Fariba Parsa. You saw her picture earlier. Sorry, that she did the Fighting for Change in Iran, and then the Ukrainian feminism's Oksana Yakushko. There were their flyers. So we make sure those flyers and the information gets out. It's included in our digest so that people know what events we are sponsoring and where they can get further information, RSVP for them. This spring, we are supporting Juana Maria Rodriguez, a well-known author. And so she is giving a talk that's related to her recent book, Puta Life, Seeing Latinas Working Sex. So her talk will be called Seeing, Sensing, Feeling, Representing Puta Life. So she'll be talking about her book and, talking about graphic narratives and oral histories and documentary films, social media selfies, how all of these, as she says, shape the life stories we consume. And so another event that we're having next week that I mentioned earlier is was organized by our first year master's student, Yaprik Eris, on international feminist solidarity. Yaprik's joined us from Turkey, and has a lot of background on the Turkish feminist movement, and also just other has really spent a lot of time studying about and learning about other kind of feminist movements that are taking place in Eastern and Western Europe that she'll be speaking to, and we're looking forward to having a productive discussion on that. So that was basically everything that I wanted to share. Here is a slide that gives you information, places you can contact. We are going to have a March open house as well. That will be, I think it says date open, but date to be announced, but I think this is the admitted students day. That'll be Thursday, March 27th. If you were to be in the area and you wanted to sit in on a class, and you were here on a Monday through Thursday, again, most classes are in the evenings, you should just contact us and we can try to arrange that for you if we have enough advance notice and if it's a course that you're able to sit in on. But there should be some options as long as we know ahead of time. So we do have social media presence. We have an Instagram, Facebook account, Twitter, and also LinkedIn. So I hope that this presentation was informative for you.